for another week of Capital Updates from the Minnesota Catholic Conference staff. I'm Jason Adkins. Normally I'm here with my colleague Maggie Hange, but Maggie has gone on maternity leave. We're delighted that she was able to welcome a baby girl, so she's out for maternity leave for the rest of the session, which just leaves us here to fill in the gaps and be the voice for Catholics and our bishops at the Capitol. So it's been another busy week as we head toward legislative deadlines, which are tomorrow. The first policy deadline and second policy deadlines were tomorrow, March 22nd. Policy bills have to go through all their committee stops in those the relevant committees in both the House and the Senate to move forward in the legislative process. The big thing to note that the physician-assisted suicide bill did not meet its committee deadlines in the Senate, and therefore it's going to be much harder for that bill to move forward as a standalone policy bill. Proponents are trying to keep it alive as a finance bill by moving it to the Ways and Means Committee. So we'll be watching out for any potential hearings both on the Senate side and as that bill potentially gets attached to a budget and finance bill going forward. But really good news on the assisted suicide front. The many voices of people taking action with their members is having an effect. We're continuing to generate lots and lots of emails, phone calls, and video messages to our elected officials. Keep up the great work. Lots of new signups as lots of parish priests are putting the packet of materials that we have on our website in the bulletins and giving people announcements, and then even from the pulpit in a few instances, talking about this important issue of why we should not be legalizing physician-assisted suicide. Because when care is expensive and killing is cheap, which do we think will ultimately prevail? So again, for more information on that, just go to our website, mncatholic.org/PAS. Again, mncatholic.org/PAS, and keep up with what's going on with that issue. So really good news. We're feeling super encouraged by the developments, but nothing is over at the Capitol until the legislature adjourns. So we need to stay on top of that issue and continue to be vigilant. And regardless of what happens this session, we still need to talk to legislators and convince them to be firm in their positions about why assisted suicide is the wrong public policy choice for Minnesota. We should be offering better care, not creating policies that hasten death. Big news this week, the governor produced his supplemental budget with a small, skinny budget, if you will, regarding the difficult and potentially challenging fiscal state that the state will find itself going forward in the next budget cycle. So a really small budget, but there was important resources set aside to better implement the child tax credit, to create the ability for those child tax credit payments to be semi-regular payments as opposed to requiring people who don't normally, in some instances, file tax returns to file a tax return. So it might be easier, just like with the old expired federal child tax credit, for those to come in periodic payments, especially for low-income families. So we're one of 30 organizations supporting that move to a periodic payment program for the child tax credit. The important thing for you to know, though, is that there is still time to file for the child tax credit in your taxes and in your tax returns. You do have to file a tax return this year for 2023 to get that, what could be a sizable child tax credit with no cap on the number of children. For more information on that, we'd encourage people to go to our Families First Project website at familiesfirstproject.com. All the information you need. There are free tax preparers out there and resources for tax preparation, even if you don't normally do it. So that's a really important issue. Another thing on the horizon this week, early in the morning, Monday night, Tuesday morning, we were able to testify again, this time in the Senate Judiciary Committee, about the restoration of the religious exemption in the Human Rights Act related to gender identity discrimination.
We are here standing today for fundamental American values of diversity of thought and the free exercise of religion as embodied in the First Amendment and our state constitution. What we are opposing is a kind of dogmatic secularism, really a competing religion built around autonomy, but which actually demands compliance from all. In fact, unlike the religions which invite people to freely believe in some things that are unseen, what this new state gender identity mandate is asking of us is to deny the plain facts of what we can see with our own eyes, or face legal penalties for refusing to do so. But biology is not bigotry and should not be characterized as such. To conclude, the removal of the exemption is a tremendous act of hostility to people of faith that makes the mantra of One Minnesota appear to be less about unity and diversity, where all are welcome, and instead one of uniformity and conformity. Thank you for your consideration, and I hope you will adopt the amendment.
Last year, that exemption was removed. It had been in law for 30 years. We thought it was an omission. Have been working with a number of faith communities. I think we're up to 10 now, different faith organizations across the spectrum: Muslim, evangelical, Lutheran, Mormon, Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, you name it. We have a great group of advocates joined together. Funny, sometimes people see those little coexist bumper stickers telling the religious communities to coexist. Well, the religious community can coexist just fine. We can get along out of mutual respect. We all hold ourselves and each other to a higher principle that God is the author of the laws and we aren't. And so religious communities actually have a great deal in common and can get along in many instances and collaborate are on common ground for the common good. What we're opposing is a kind of dogmatic secularism, though, that really basically says if you don't subscribe to this new gender identity mandate, then you will be punished under penalty of law for noncompliance. And so we're pushing back against this kind of dogmatic, in-your-face secularism that's being proposed by this gender identity mandate. It's a huge issue. Unfortunately, the Senate Judiciary Committee voted down that exemption. We are still hopeful, though, through working with elected officials and legislative leaders, that we will be able to come to a positive resolution and restore that religious exemption, something we're definitely bird dogging, as we like to say here at the Capitol, and really trying to stay on top of it. It's a huge issue that could have significant impacts on ministries and schools especially. We do have recourse in the courts, and that's kind of what the Senate committee implied that we should do, is just go to the court. But we shouldn't have to go to the court to defend our rights and our prerogatives. We should be able to operate our schools and our religious communities without governmental interference with regard to who we hire and as teachers, and who we hire and employ as clergy. These are mission critical things. You can't really have a religious organization without staff who subscribe to the core tenets of the faith. So watch out for that. We'll continue to keep people updated on this important issue of the Human Rights Act as well. Some really notable developments on another religious liberty front with regard to healthcare insurance mandates. There are 3 proposals to mandate in all health insurance plans coverage of so-called gender-affirming care, infertility treatments, including in vitro fertilization, but also abortioning, further expansion of abortion coverage mandates in state and all healthcare plans in the state. And so our point is simple. Healthcare is healing and restorative. These 3 procedures do none of those things. They don't heal and they don't restore. In 2 cases, they result in the destruction of innocent human life. In another case, they prevent the proper functioning of body parts, either through surgeries or pharmaceuticals. So we think healthcare insurance should cover healthcare. If employers want to cover those things, they are free to do so. But what our argument is not only are those unethical, but religious communities for whom those mandates violate their deeply held beliefs should not be required to cooperate in them by funding them in their healthcare plans. And so this week in the Senate, we were able to get 2 of those 3 mandates exempt for religious employers, the abortion mandate and the gender-affirming care mandate. So those, at least at this point in the Senate, have religious exemptions. So that's something to be watching out for, and we'll continue to advocate to make sure those employer health plans for religious organizations and closely held businesses that are faith-based and have a faith-based component to them do have the conscience protection to be able to provide good, authentic health insurance policies for their employees, because that's really what's at stake here, is our ability to provide healthcare coverage for our employees consistent with our conscience. Yes, individuals have religious liberty, but also institutions do as well. And again, if any employer wants to cover these things, that employer can do so. All we're asking for is simply an exemption from those mandates, and the law requires that complying with that exemption means we have to tell prospective employees that we do not provide that coverage, which is fair and perfectly reasonable, and something which we can comply. So no one's being forced to work for a religious employer. So these are really, really important issues that we're staying on top of at the Capitol. Of course, you can follow along with what's going on by joining the Catholic Advocacy Network at mncatholic.org, staying involved, getting updates about key events at the Capitol, but then at the same time, taking the opportunity to join but with a click of the mouse, connect with your legislators about the issues that we've mentioned here in this program and other important ones as well. It's been a great blessing to continue to do this work, to help be your voice at the Capitol. Join with us through the Catholic Advocacy Network, and we'll be joining you next week for probably a shorter update as we head into Holy Week. But until then, I'm Jason Adkins from the Minnesota Catholic Conference. Thanks for listening, and God bless the rest of your Passiontide and Holy Week.